Homage to fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to wisdom warrior Manjushri. Homage to all lineage benevolent masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning in order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta. Today we continue studying the words of my perfect teacher. I see that the last class was our 100th lesson, so today is our 101st lesson. We can say that most of the content has already been covered. Whether it's truly most, judging by page count, most has indeed been covered. Previously, we taught the way of the Bodhisattva in 201 lessons. For the words of my perfect teacher, I don't know how many lessons it will take, but I hope you will all make an effort, and I will make an effort too. I think teaching 1 or 2 lessons isn't very difficult. Sometimes when I go to various organizations or schools, after teaching, they say, "You must be very tired." I say, teaching 1 or 2 lessons isn't much pressure for me, but to teach long term, first, we have so many people here, and everyone's interests and thoughts are different. So if the same stories are used repeatedly, they become old hat and lose interest. If the same scripture or quotations are used long term, they lose their impact. For me, it's impossible to have entirely new content every day. Making everyone satisfied is also a challenge. For you all, constantly listening to classes is also a kind of pressure. In these degenerate times, many people are unwilling to teach or study. Some people are completely unfamiliar with even the most basic and simple Buddhist doctrines, let alone engaging in deep study and practice. So I think we should make joint efforts and continue to encourage each other. Speaking of adding fuel, gas prices are getting higher and higher now. We might not be able to afford it. If that doesn't work, we'll add water, but that won't work either. Good. Now let's discuss the cultivation of bodhicitta. Among the uncommon preliminaries, the cultivation method of bodhicitta has been completed. Today, we begin discussing the training of bodhicitta. After generating bodhicitta, one should observe the precepts of bodhicitta. This is divided into aspiration bodhicitta training and application bodhicitta training. First, aspiration bodhicitta training is divided into 3 aspects. Cultivating bodhicitta of equalizing self and others, cultivating bodhicitta of exchanging self and others, and cultivating bodhicitta of cherishing others more than oneself. These 3 divisions. I think everyone present has already generated aspiration bodhicitta. If we were to vote by raising hands, everyone here has already made this vow before the Guru, 3 jewels, and all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. To benefit countless sentient beings from now on, everyone has made this vow. But making a vow alone is not enough. After making the vow, how should we act? There are requirements for this below, so we must certainly study and contemplate. We don't necessarily need to study and contemplate by listening to some particular teacher's classes. Speaking generally regarding Buddhism's profound meaning, if we don't study systematically and only take things out of context with superficial understanding, indeed, there will be no systematization, no integration, no gradual progression. In that case, our study and practice will not succeed. So regarding the bodhicitta of exchanging self and others and equalizing self and others, we still need to understand the true ultimate meaning of Mahayana Buddhism. Why do I say this? Because many of us may have some connection to past lives, people with greater merit from past lives regarding Mahayana teachings, whether bodhicitta teachings or teachings on practicing the 10 virtues. When they first hear them, they feel tremendous joy, even to the point where their hair stands on end and tears flow. Some people, no matter what, whether the faults of samsara or the benefits of bodhicitta, when these are explained, they really don't feel anything. Others may encourage them or try to get them to generate bodhicitta, but they may not necessarily do so. The Sutra of the Great Heap of Jewels also says, beings with little merit have no joy in this. They don't observe the faults of birth and death, nor delight in bodhicitta. People without merit have no interest in practicing virtue and abandoning evil. Especially, they never contemplate the faults and sufferings of samsara, nor do they joyfully pursue the benefits and qualities of bodhicitta. So this is indeed related to our merit from past lives. I've said before that our long-term study and practice is indeed very closely related to one's merit from past lives. Otherwise, initially, some people really want to study the Dharma, but in the middle, they encounter various obstacles, and then their study and practice is abandoned halfway. But if one has greater merit, no matter what, whether engaging in any worldly career or monastic practice, their view is always especially correct and pure. Their practice also has a good beginning and ending, being complete. So in our process of study and practice, on one hand, I think frequent confession is important. Reciting Vajrasattva's mantra and 100-syllable mantra for confession is very important. At the same time, our prayers to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are extremely important, especially in one's shrine room or in relatively quiet places, or when reciting together with the community. One should truly generate reverence for the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in one's mind. We think in our minds, through my fervent prayers like this, may the incomparable blessings and wisdom of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas definitely merge into me and elevate my mental state. May all my original bad habits and obstacles be completely purified. May the seeds and sprouts of liberation in my mind immediately blossom and bear fruit. Ripening such fruits, whether alone in one's mind or when with the group. Actually, this kind of human psychology really works. For example, if you have tremendous faith in Guru Rinpoche, always visualizing him and continuously praying. Now, when we practice bodhicitta, we also take Guru Rinpoche as the form of our root teacher. And the root teacher and lineage teachers, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, are indivisible from his essence. At this time, while we recite verses of generating bodhicitta, really, sometimes our minds become devoted to the utmost. Finally, tears stream down our faces. At such times, the blessings of the three jewels naturally merge like rainwater flowing into the ocean, all merging into the ocean of one's own mind, and the true moonlight of liberation can appear. My analogy may not be perfect, but in the mind, we as Buddhists should frequently make prayers. This is very important. Now here it also says, what is the cause of our wandering in samsara's great ocean of suffering since beginningless time? It is grasping at a self when there is no self, grasping at oneself when there is no oneself, always placing oneself in the primary position and cherishing oneself greatly. It has always been like this. The Lankavatara Sutra also says, among the five aggregates there is no self, no person, no sentient being. We ourselves, just as explained in the root stanzas of the Middle Way, the five aggregates don't exist. Neither personal self nor phenomenal self exists. But we, ordinary beings, always grasp at non-existent things as if they exist. Originally, neither I nor you exists. The entire world is indeed illusory, ethereal, and insubstantial, like travelers in a dream. Yet everyone grasps very solidly at these things before them. This is the sole cause of our wandering, ego clinging. Buddhism uses various methods to analyze and develop the view of selflessness, enabling countless great masters of the past to understand selflessness. When you understand selflessness, you regard the world very remarkably. This world is very remarkable. Why is this so? Each being originally has no self. Having no self doesn't mean some people forcefully stipulate through theory that there is none. Indeed, when you use practice to investigate, the essence of self cannot be found. Through certain reasoning, like the neither one nor many reasoning, existence non-existence reasoning, and Vajra fragment reasoning in Madhyamaka. When investigating with these, it indeed cannot be found. Yet we pitiful beings grasp at self and possessions of self, and wander in boundless samsara. It's truly remarkable to understand this. So we need to observe like this. Now, no matter when or where I am, I solely wish for my own happiness, and don't want to experience even a fraction of suffering. Even if a small thorn pricks my body, or if a tiny spark falls on my body, I immediately feel unbearable pain. My mouth involuntarily cries out, "It hurts, it hurts," unable to bear it. Whether it's on your body or foot, the other day I saw a layperson wearing yellow clothes who is still there today. A small nail pricked his foot, and wow, he kept going like this. I wondered if something major had happened, but that nail was extremely tiny. I saw after class he was walking normally, nothing serious. So we humans are like this, and I am also like this. I'm even worse, even more like this. A tiny spark or just a little bit. When a small needle enters your body, when we receive IV fluids or injections, the doctor in some doctors' hands are rather particularly that kind. At such times, it's very painful. Why is this? Our attachment to self is like this. Everyone doesn't need to discuss it. Everyone's self-attachment is just like this. Even if a tiny louse bites our back, we become furious and generate anger. If a small louse is biting your back, we reach out scratching to catch it and place it on our fingernail, then press hard with the other fingernail, even after the louse is already dead. Originally in Tibetan areas there were, I don't know if Han regions have them, feeling everywhere, and if you really find a small louse, place it here, then with the other fingernail, squeeze it to death. The tiny louse is already completely dead, yet he keeps squeezing, because it bit his own body. He's particularly angry. I see in cities, some people are also like this. For example, when a mosquito bites your body, they also pinch it to death like this, already long dead, yet they keep pinching like this. Actually, this is a kind of self-protection, not caring at all about other beings' lives. Because their remaining anger hasn't subsided, the two fingers keep rubbing back and forth. Actually, many people now think there's no wrongdoing in killing lice, but actually, this act of killing lice is completely motivated by hatred. Therefore, it's absolutely a cause for falling into the hell of crushing if one creates such negative karma. So, some people indeed, in Tibetan areas there was also this saying, that lice have insignificant lives, so killing them causes no harm. Now in Han regions too, some kill cockroaches, kill rats, and also kill some insects that are harmful to farmland, etc. This killing is also considered no big deal, nothing serious. Even some Buddhists also agree, in different situations, if there's really no other way, for things harmful to people, one can find ways to spray some pesticide. I've personally heard some Buddhists also advocating this, but this kind of statement is indeed unreasonable in Buddhism regarding killing beings. Regarding lice too, if they are on the body, we should handle it well according to the Vinaya. We can't use pesticides, such methods are unreasonable. However, other religions have had other views in the past. For example, Zhou Zuoren, Lucian's brother, specifically wrote The Louse. In it, he used Russell's article Marriage and Morals, saying that the church at that time should be Christianity. Christianity, considered being filthy on the body, was actually a sign of praise. St. Paul particularly advocated that a very clean body and very clean clothes are signs of a very filthy heart and soul. So if lice crawl all over one's body, this is God's most beloved person. Lice are God's most favorite pearls, showing that the practitioners of that time. I later saw someone called William in his History of European Morals saying that early Christianity for about 1,000 years was called ascetic Christianity. They completely did not advocate hygiene and cleanliness of the human body. In Europe, this continued for close to 1,000 years, but now, internationally, many Christians are also not like this. It should be the behavior of some ascetics. So perhaps there are different religions in the world. If you've read other worldly books, everyone knows there are different viewpoints. They felt that having more and more lights on the body was a sign of spiritual practice. This was a symbol of God's great fondness for you. There are such views too. Including in past Tibetan areas, very few so-called practitioners, they didn't care much about bodily hygiene at all. But I think these are unnecessary, because in our Vinaya, protecting the body and maintaining hygiene and cleanliness, these are all very much emphasized. In the Kriya and Charya sections of Tantra, there are teachings on hygiene and cleanliness. Whether it's the indoor spaces where you live or the principles of protecting the body, these are explained very clearly. Now we should protect ourselves. This is necessary on the conventional level. But what's emphasized here regarding this protection is that people particularly guard every bit and drop regarding themselves. If others harm me even slightly, I really can't bear it. But if others bite me once, I want to kill them. This kind of attitude is indeed very unreasonable in our Mahayana Bodhicitta. Here it says, for us, generally minor sufferings are unbearable, yet we turn around and harm other beings, creating immense suffering for them. We often see this in the world. For example, if a dog bites once, you immediately shoot it dead with a gun. Now in the world, there are many acts of revenge that are excessive or unequal. Such behavior is truly shameful. Actually, all these beings in the three realms equally long to obtain all happiness and don't want to suffer even the slightest pain. Buddhist compassion truly extends to all beings. What we're very happy about now is that people all have opportunities to receive such education. Of course, not all people can necessarily do it completely, understand it, or practice it, but we need to know the tremendously great benefits of this education. All beings don't want to experience even the slightest suffering, and their pursuits are all about wanting to obtain true happiness. This is completely the same as oneself. Although they wish for happiness and don't want to suffer, they don't know what the causes of practicing happiness are, which are the 10 virtuous actions, like not killing, not stealing. Instead, they completely focus their energy on the causes of suffering, the 10 non-virtuous actions. Indeed, many people now are like this. Every day they tirelessly pursue happiness, but while pursuing happiness, you continuously create causes of suffering. In this way, when you experience suffering, some understand, while others still don't understand. So this kind of behavior, what one thinks and what one does, are completely contrary to each other. This can be said to be a kind of ignorance of worldly people. Indeed, worldly people's thoughts and actions run contrary to each other. This is also governed by one's own ignorance. The Sutra of the Buddha's skillful means in repaying kindness also says, the ocean of birth and death in the 5 realms is like falling into filthy mud. What is the reason for this? Because of being bound by craving and desire, lacking wisdom, and being deluded by the world. All beings in the 6 realms of samsara are completely like being submerged in mud. Why? This is due to worldly ignorance, being bound by craving and desire. One lacks wisdom, being deluded by various delusory phenomena of the world. This is how it's explained. So sometimes when we see the actions of people in big cities, seeing the actions of many people in the world, naturally a sense of lamentation arises in our hearts. There's an indescribable feeling. People are truly pitiful. So many beings regarding ourselves, we don't even know whether the so-called self exists or not. On the ultimate level, the self indeed doesn't exist, but everyone thinks it exists and rushes about for it. On the conventional level, the value of my life and the value of any other being's life are completely equal. Yet our protecting ourselves while harming others is a very unreasonable approach. But there's no choice. Society has already become like this. All these beings who have always suffered hardships, actually since beginningless time, not one has never been one's own parent. We've also said this repeatedly before. Indeed, when observing through scriptural quotations and logical reasoning from all aspects, all beings throughout long periods of time have indeed been one's own parents. I am now fortunate to have been accepted by an excellent spiritual teacher with perfect qualifications. I have already entered the door of the authentic Dharma and understand the difference between benefit and harm. I should rightfully care for and protect all mother sentient beings who are confused by ignorance, with the same love as for myself, and patiently endure their wrong actions and prejudices. That is to say, one should cultivate equality toward friends and enemies. One must think that sentient beings and oneself are completely equal. Indeed, now in this lifetime, we have encountered a teacher with the proper qualifications and entered Buddha Shakyamuni's authentic Dharma. We ourselves have also, more or less, through study and contemplation, come to know the harm of creating negative karma and the merit of practicing virtue. In that case, if we don't care at all that the beings around us are suffering so much, but we don't care at all and just leave them aside, starting to seek practice and liberation for ourselves alone would indeed be unreasonable. Our Dharma is so good. Around us, there are so many beings suffering various kinds of hardships. We should try every possible means to alleviate their suffering. I've also often spoken about this. For example, now, other religions. Every year in a city, they add hundreds of centers and hundreds of churches. Every year in every city, they increase their followers by thousands or even tens of thousands. Why are they like this? This is due to their own efforts. With organization and planning, everyone promotes this way. After this, their organizations become larger and larger. But we Buddhists, according to statistics, in cities like these, some cities have fewer Buddhists year by year, absorbing Buddhists into their groups. Some cities have some increase, but there are basically no Dharma centers. In a city, there are as many Dharma centers originally as there are now. Our followers statistically only number in the hundreds per year. Many cities have many people learning through various channels. So if this continues, we, Mahayana Buddhists, each holding our prayer beads and closing our eyes, Om Mani Padme Hum. Some people, Namo Amitabha Buddha, taking care of ourselves alone. Besides this, we ourselves might be fine. Indeed, we also. If we just take care of ourselves and don't care about anything else, this is due to Buddha Shakyamuni's blessings and the Three Jewels' blessings. We have food and clothing. This is certain. Unlike some suffering people in the world now, who think every day about what to eat, what to wear, where to live, we won't think like that. I believe every practitioner should be able to manage. But this kind of motivation of ours just thinks about ourselves, even though there's still a lot of space around us that we haven't occupied. We also don't need to compete with other religions for territory. It's not like that. But look around us. What is their spirit of promoting religion like? We Buddhists, from the perspective of Mahayana Buddhist doctrine itself, should surpass other religions, to be honest, because it involves all beings, including wisdom and compassion in many aspects. I dare say, in certain fields, I often speak this way to other intellectuals and people of different faiths. In the process of speaking, we all commonly recognize and resonate with this. But generally, many Buddhists, your mindset 10 years ago was like this. Your mindset 5 years ago was also like this. Life is very brief. After another 5 or 10 years, you might still be in that state. Many people, is the direction you're initially cultivating considered a kind of self-liberation? Why do I study Buddhism? I study Buddhism to eliminate my own afflictions. We often speak of Hinayana. Actually Hinayana Arhats have particularly lofty goals of liberation from the ocean of samsara suffering. We might not even have this. Temporarily eliminating my greed, hatred, and ignorance would be fine. Making me happy would be enough. How happy meditation makes me. How happy reciting Buddha's name makes me. If you take happiness as the main goal of your study and practice, I think there are still some deficiencies, because the beings around us are indeed very pitiful. Beings lack freedom and constantly create various negative karmas, as it says in the ornament of the Mahayana Sutras. Enduring them increases compassion, thus no affliction and no transgression. Beings are constantly controlled by afflictions, lacking freedom. All day they create various karmas like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and lying. As one who has generated Mahayana Bodhicitta, on one hand, one will patiently endure various sufferings with compassion, and in one's own mind stream, because of having various skillful means, there are no afflictions, and one won't fail to accord with the world. But there are also no violations of Dharma. One seeks truth for oneself. We cannot be swayed by others' wrong views and wrong knowledge. As one who has generated Mahayana Bodhicitta, one should have a kind of self-respect. One should have a relatively stable character and established direction. In summary, we must repeatedly cultivate this. Whatever we hope to have in terms of happiness for ourselves at any time or place, we also hope other beings will equally possess. We like happiness, and other beings also like happiness. Whatever diligent effort we exert to obtain happiness for ourselves, we should also pay the same price for other beings to obtain happiness. How much energy and time we're willing to spend daily earning money for ourselves, for our lives, for our own parents, relatives, and friends, then how much we spend for unrelated beings and other beings. We can ask ourselves with hand on heart, we ourselves strive to abandon even minor sufferings. We should likewise try our best to eliminate others' minor sufferings. We ourselves become joyful and delighted because of enjoying happiness, wealth, and abundant resources. Then, when others possess happiness, wealth, and resources, we should likewise be genuinely happy from the heart. We ourselves like longevity, prosperity, and all happiness, and don't want to accept any suffering. Self and others both equally dislike suffering. As Shantideva says in The Way of the Bodhisattva, what difference is there between self and other? Why protect only myself? Beings and I should be in not wanting to accept any suffering. We are completely the same. I fear pain, I fear death, I fear being beaten by others. Beings are also like this, but in our actual behavior, why is there such a huge disparity, such a great difference? Why do I particularly not care about any beings around me and only care about myself? Every day we say with our mouths, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, however you generate bodhicitta, I also generate bodhicitta like that. This is what we say. But Pachu Rinpoche also said before, this is us deceiving the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Actually, we don't even think about it. Sometimes when we Buddhists really examine our minds, we feel a bit ashamed. It seems what we say sounds very nice. I want to benefit all boundless beings in the world. When speaking, it's still very good. But, in summary, regarding all beings in the three realms, one must view them with no difference from oneself. Furthermore, wholeheartedly and with full effort, accomplish the immediate and long-term happiness and benefit of beings. Actually, if we sometimes can't completely practice these teachings, just reading them once has incomparable blessings and power. So regarding all boundless beings in the world, we should treat them with no difference from ourselves, and with full effort and wholehearted dedication, begin doing beneficial things. We must practice. This kind of bodhicitta is not something that arises immediately after listening to one or two classes. It's not like that, but indeed, people who have particularly strong faith in Mahayana Buddhism, with continuous effort, will perfect their practice and realization. I greatly admire many veteran practitioners. They treat their own long-term practice as the most important thing. Now, many young practitioners can sometimes be diligent for 2 or 3 days. For example, after hearing a teacher's instruction, reading a book, or encountering some relatively joyful events, for 2 or 3 days they retreat, wake up early, sleep late. That's still manageable, but after a while, it's as if they suddenly got sick. They can't do it anymore. I heard a Khenpo say he encountered a foreign Toku. Usually, his faith was very good, but once when he encountered him, his face seemed slightly swollen, and his complexion was particularly bad. He asked, "How are you? What's the reason? Are you sick?" He generally doesn't speak about his own merits, but revealed a little bit to him. He said, "These past few days, because I just arrived here, there have been many social obligations everywhere. Day and night, basically for long periods, I've been continuously busy, probably until before midnight. There are many social obligations, continuously. Meetings, discussions, there are many things that really can't be helped. After finishing social obligations, I have many daily practices myself. I recited the practices. After finishing the practices, he said he begins meditation around 4 o'clock every day. The next morning's activities begin again. I haven't slept for 2 days already. I might recover in a couple of days." This is what he said. Then I thought about it. Indeed, many of us are busy praising work and affairs in a primary position, while often abandoning or forgetting recitation and meditation. Even when too tired, thinking, "Never mind, let's talk about it in a couple of days." But some practitioners, this veteran practitioner has also said before, during the most severe times in Tibetan areas, during the Cultural Revolution, he recited the chanting the names of Manjushri more than 10 times every day without interruption. No matter how dangerous, he never interrupted reciting it 3 times. So some veteran practitioners, recently a disciple of a Han Chinese master over 100 years old, came to me, and I asked about it then. About his teacher, he said he still insists on getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning. In our hometown, there's also a veteran practitioner who is like this. I often ask when their disciples come about these veteran practitioners, what time they get up in the morning and what time they sleep at night. Usually in their minds, what position does Dharma practice hold? Sometimes when I hear about them or see some of their behaviors, I feel particularly inferior myself sometimes. Although I haven't invested all my time entirely into the 8 worldly concerns and non-virtuous activities, but compared to them who arrange all their daily time to be used entirely for spreading Dharma or practice, compared to such people, the virtuous deeds I do are truly extremely insignificant. I often think of a passage in the Sutra of the right mindfulness of Dharma. If one is diligent without rest, thus performing virtuous deeds, such a person will always experience happiness and later attain nirvana. So if we truly don't rest and constantly perform virtuous deeds, there are many aspects of virtuous deeds. One's own practice is there, reading books is there, many virtuous deeds like this. Such a person in this life and the next will definitely receive good retribution and be happy in the not too distant future. They will attain nirvana. So the future prospects of these practitioners are definitely bright. But we, people on the surface, all look the same, all composed of flesh and blood. He also eats 3 meals. I also eat 3 meals. He also wears this kind of clothing. I also wear this kind of clothing. But in the mind, there's an invisible force. In this force, there's a great difference between practitioners and non-practitioners. Mahayana practitioners and non-Mahayana practitioners indeed have great differences. So people's facial features and superficial behaviors are indeed difficult to distinguish in terms of differences. The best person and the worst person standing side by side on the surface, if a stranger came to evaluate and score them, they probably couldn't tell. The most selfish person who commits all kinds of evil, and someone who practices virtue throughout their life and will be liberated in the future. When these two people are standing on the surface, to see which is a good person or bad person is very difficult. Actually, each person's own practice and mental attitudes toward benefiting beings in various ways have very great differences. So here in the future, we should make full efforts. This doesn't mean we must. For example, my own strength is originally limited. But if I must do things that exceed my scope, this is not what's being said. The treatise on the provisions for enlightenment also says, Bodhisattvas should not abandon sentient beings. According to one's capacity, care for them at all times. According to one's own strength and time, according to one's own circumstances. Care for them at all times. Each of us must certainly remember this. We should follow our own. It's not saying that I'm originally. For example, a small tractor can originally load 1 ton of things. But 30 tons of things from a large truck, if loaded on a small tractor, there's definitely no way. So we who are just beginning, little bodhisattvas, if you must liberate countless beings and give your body's flesh, piece by piece to beings, not sleeping even 1 hour during the 24 hours of a day, every day contemplating beings suffering, this is impossible for them to do. But are wholeheartedly and making full efforts to care for beings, making wholehearted efforts to do this is very important. Here it also says that accomplishing things for beings is actually very important. Especially what we are discussing here is equalizing self and others. Beings are exactly the same as me. This is very important. Previously, Geshe Trungpa Shinchen asked Venerable Padampa Sangye. He said, "Please give me one teaching that can summarize all Dharma essentials." He requested one sentence that encompasses all practice. Actually, we also often encounter this. "Can you please, because I'm too lazy, I'm too busy, can you please tell me something to practice throughout my life that will definitely eliminate ego clinging and let me quickly achieve accomplishment? Give me a teaching that's particularly precious, a short sentence. Is this possible?" Many people speak like this. At that time, Padampa Sangye said, "Whatever you yourself hope for, other beings also hope for that. Practice empathy like this." This is what he taught. What you yourself think, originally. Wasn't there also a person who said, "Teach me a class. You will die. I will also die." He taught him this teaching. Later, the one seeking teachings achieved realization. Here it says, "What you yourself like, others also like." Don't we originally have, "Do not impose on others what you do not want"? In Confucius's Analects, this is still very important content. His disciple asked him about something to use throughout life. At that time, Confucius first spoke of forgiveness, but he didn't understand forgiveness. Later, he said this sentence, and after saying this, he basically understood. But I see some professors teaching the Analects explain this sentence with a not very broad scope, completely using their own understanding to interpret it. After interpreting it, many intellectuals criticized and scolded them later. So whether we're discussing ancient culture or Buddhist doctrines, we should try our best to approach their original meaning. Otherwise, we might receive others' criticism. So this teaching, what you yourself like, others will also like. Think this way yourself. There's nothing else besides this. This is truly a very profound teaching in Mahayana Buddhism. So we must eradicate the negative thoughts of cherishing ourselves and hating others. Treat self and all other beings equally. If we treat them equally, this is truly a very profound teaching regarding the path to enlightenment. This is equalizing self and others. What you think, others also think. We who practice Mahayana Buddhism should at all times use this sentence to remind ourselves. The second below is the bodhicitta of exchanging self and others. The method of cultivating bodhicitta of exchanging self and others. When you personally witness beings suffering from illness, hunger, thirst, and other sufferings, when you see them yourself. For example, among humans, whoever is particularly suffering, or among other animals, some pitiful beings you personally witness. You can take this as the object, or without a real object, visualize in front of yourself a being who is being oppressed by suffering. When you exhale outward, visualize that all your happiness, excellence, body, possessions, and virtuous roots, just like taking off clothes and putting them on others, you give them completely. In various commentaries on the 7 points of training the mind, this is repeatedly explained. A particularly profound practice method. When you inhale inward, visualize that of other beings, including the beings we visualize, or the suffering of these beings we see with our eyes. All their suffering is drawn entirely into your own body, to be borne by yourself, whereby they are freed from suffering and attain happiness. This is what we often practice as the giving and taking method of cultivating bodhicitta. Start by practicing with 1, 2, 3 individual beings. Eventually, all the sufferings of all infinite, boundless beings, let me absorb them. Think like this. Actually, when we speak of equalizing self and others, they and I are equal. Patru Rinpoche gives an analogy. For example, when walking in the snow, one person has a pair of shoes, another person has no shoes. That person thinks, he's also a being. I'm also a being. I'll give him one of my shoes, so I'll also only wear 1 foot with shoes, 1 foot without shoes. He's also like this. We too should accept this equally. But when exchanging self and others, I have a pair of shoes and I give them to him. I bear his suffering. Originally, walking barefoot in the snow would definitely be very painful, so I accept his pain. Thus the level should already be elevated. His suffering should be transferred to my body, my happiness transferred to him, just like my happiness, my clothes given to him. He has already put them on. Once put on, he won't have this kind of suffering. So from worldly concepts, this kind of bodhicitta is very difficult to manifest in the world. When previous Tibetan Buddhist masters spoke about the benefits of bodhicitta, for example, when several people have one raincoat and it's raining heavily, you let them use this raincoat while I myself get drenched in the rain. Actually, we often have some spirit of helping others in the world. The spirit of helping others should be close to bodhicitta, but to be completely close would have some difficulties. Therefore, throughout the entire path to enlightenment, we should observe in detail in actual daily life, when you yourself encounter dissatisfaction or suffering. Likewise, visualize that in the 3 realms of samsara, there are many, many beings experiencing such suffering. How pitiful all these beings must be. May all their sufferings ripen upon my body. May all beings be freed from suffering and attain happiness. From the depths of your heart, repeatedly visualize like this. For any being at all, let me bear their suffering, and all my happiness, let them all obtain it. When you yourself enjoy happiness and so forth, visualize, through this happiness of mine, may all beings obtain happiness. Even every bit of happiness we have in daily life, dedicate it all to beings. We can sacrifice ourselves for the sake of beings. Worldly people do speak like this. Recently, there was also worldly news. President Obama said, "For the prosperity of countries worldwide and peace for the people, America is willing to sacrifice itself." Recently, wasn't bin Laden killed in Pakistan? For about more than a week, they kept observing. Finally, when they examined through DNA, it was indeed him. It seems he was killed by a small number of soldiers in Pakistan and found America was extremely, extremely joyful. But sometimes I think bin Laden was also very pitiful. Having killed so many beings, finally his corpse, according to Muslim tradition, must be handled within 24 hours. But no country dared to accept his body. Later it seems they set in the ocean. The ocean actually involves the territory of all countries. Sometimes when we compare worldly hatred between people with Mahayana Buddhist concepts, there are still great differences in the comparison process. What they say sounds very nice. Worldly people also say, for the safety, happiness, peace and democracy of people worldwide, we're willing to sacrifice. But fundamentally, truly at that time, it may not necessarily be for others. It may be for oneself. Why is America so angry? For hundreds of years now, Perhaps during World War II, they were threatened. During 9/11, they were also threatened. Their hearts remained restless, searching everywhere. Originally, when I was translating the White Lotus in Han regions, I saw news. Wow, they were preparing to spend so much money to find Bin Laden. As a result, 10 years had passed and only now they found him. Sometimes people's karmic forces from past lives, those who create karma, are pitiful, and those who experience results are also pitiful. When observing from Buddhism's perspective of cause and effect, in our world, there are many games. The roles that each being plays are all different. But within this, all have some uncommon thoughts, no matter what, as those who have generated Mahayana Bodhicitta, taking being's benefit as primary. First, our non-regression is very important. Even if experiencing countless sufferings in the 3 lower realms, do not abandon bodhicitta. This is spoken in the Sutra of the Great Assembly. Being's benefit is particularly important. Mahayana bodhisattvas should be like this, extremely diligent in benefiting beings, because great compassion is their nature. Why should one cultivate beings in this way? Because one is completely guided by great compassion. So worldly people's helping others and striving for peace is completely different from our bodhisattva's unconditional actions of benefiting beings. They are completely different. So this bodhicitta of exchanging self and others is actually the unmistaken ultimate essence that all those entering the Mahayana path must cultivate. Even if this bodhicitta of exchanging self and others arises once in one's mind stream, it can purify negative karma from many lifetimes and perfect vast accumulations of merit and wisdom, gaining liberation from lower realms and places of wrong views. We're not talking about long-term arising. Even if the bodhicitta of exchanging self and others arises once in our mind stream, once a day, or occasionally once, it will purify beginningless negative karma and perfect vast accumulations. Below, we use a story from Buddha Shakyamuni's time as a bodhisattva to illustrate this. The Buddha's sutras record this way. Long ago, our great teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni, was reborn in the hell of pulling carts. At that time, together with companion Kamarupa, they pulled carts together. Because the two of them were weak and couldn't pull the cart, they suffered beatings from the hell guardians. We previously called them ox-headed Apang. As mentioned in the Sutra of the Buddha's skillful means in repaying kindness, the ox-headed Apang began fierce striking. The ox-headed Apang used blazing weapons to hammer, strike fiercely, extremely painful. At this time he thought, we two pulling the cart together cannot move it. Rather than suffering together, it's better for me alone to pull the cart and bear the burden. Let my companion obtain happiness. So he told the hell guardians, please tie my companion's rope around my neck. Let me alone pull the cart. His name should have been called Jyoti. When he said this, the hell guardians became very angry, saying, beings experience their respective karmas. Who has the power to change this? After saying this, they began striking his head with iron hammers. As a result, through the power of his virtuous mind, he instantly gained liberation from hell. Buddha Shakyamuni's initial generation of bodhicitta should have been like this. In the Sutra of the Buddha's skillful means in repaying kindness, there's someone called Bodhisattva King of Joy. Bodhisattva King of Joy asked the world-honored one, what was it like when you first generated bodhicitta? At that time, he said, in the fiery cart hell, when pulling carts, generating such virtuous mind towards his friend. Finally, all negative karma from 100 kalpas was exhausted, and he went to the heavenly realm. I remember in the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish, there's also this story. At that time, Ananda asked the Buddha, what was your initial generation of bodhicitta like? The Buddha also told this story, basically the same as this story. What's somewhat different is, of course, Buddha Shakyamuni's initial generation of bodhicitta is described somewhat differently in various sutras. The Vinayavastu mentions, at that time there was a king called King Prashenajit, who asked Buddha Shakyamuni, What was it like when you first generated Bodhicitta? At that time, Buddha Shakyamuni said, long kalpas ago, there was a king of light. This king of light was actually quite remarkable. He particularly loved an elephant and had the elephant trainers below tame it. After a very long time, they said the elephant had been well tamed. They handed it to the king, and then the king rode it. This is also found in the White Lotus. Originally, some students from our Manjushri elementary school also spoke about this during oral exams. The king rode the elephant, thinking it was truly well tamed. Then he went hunting in the forest. But when they reached the forest, the elephant caught the scent of a female elephant and began running wildly. The king on top had no way to control it. When we were young, riding horses, if the horse suddenly ran, we'd be terrified. The king was also in the forest and truly very frightened. He began calling for his elephant trainer. The elephant trainer nearby said, "There's no other way. Grab onto tree branches." Later, the king barely managed to grab a tree branch and hung in the air while the elephant ran away. The king slowly came down, and after coming down, he reproached the elephant trainer. "Why didn't you say it was already well tamed?" He said, "This isn't a problem with its body. Its body has been tamed, but the mind hasn't been tamed. When the mind generates desire, I have no way to control it either. Its body is indeed already well subdued." But later, the king didn't believe it. He said, "Come back and see in 7 days." After 7 days, the elephant could hold a burning iron ball in its mouth, hissing as it burned, but it could still swallow it. At this point, the elephant trainer asked the king, "Do you want it to continue swallowing? If it swallows, the elephant will die." Finally, the king couldn't bear it and told him to stop. He said, "Why is the body tamed but its mind not subdued?" He said, "Subduing the mind isn't my job. I'm an elephant trainer and can only subdue its body." Later, the king said, "Then who would come to subdue the mind?" Finally, he said, "To subdue the mind, only a Buddha would have this ability." Understanding the Buddha's power and wisdom, he then began generating bodhicitta. In that case, I will also begin to become a Buddha. In the Vinaya, there are 2 verses. One verse says, "Cultivating infinite merit, seeking Buddhahood, becoming the Sugata sovereign. For those who haven't reached the other shore, I vow to liberate them and bring them to the shore." The meaning is, I cultivated infinite merit, attained Buddhahood, and became the Sugata sovereign. And for the countless beings who previously weren't liberated, I vow to liberate them, vow to let them reach the other shore. He generated such a mind. This is the first verse, when the Buddha initially began. There's another one that says, hearing of the Buddha's freedom from desire, generating bodhicitta, also practicing generosity and Dharma transformation. Dharma transformation means transforming through the true Dharma. May I in the future become a Buddha, benefiting beings and extinguishing greed, he said. Through hearing about the Buddha, that the Buddha is completely free from desire, through the Buddha, the most difficult to tame greed in our mind stream can all be eliminated. Generate bodhicitta, practice the 6 perfections and myriad practices, generosity, ethics, patience, and wisdom to transform beings. May I attain Buddhahood in the future to benefit infinite, boundless beings. May both self and others be freed from such greed. So the Buddha initially used such verses to vow to benefit beings. Buddha Shakyamuni said that King of Light was his past life. In various different sutras, the Buddha's initial generation of bodhicitta all have different beginnings. But generally speaking, we've also discussed here, no matter what, this mind of benefiting beings. For each of us, we can also say it's the beginning of generating bodhicitta. The beginning of studying Buddhism, I think, is. Many people say, my first day of taking refuge was with such and such teacher. Look at my refuge certificate. Then they take out a dirty refuge certificate from a dirty bag. Just joking. Refuge certificates are very important, but most importantly, at the beginning, our generation of bodhicitta is very important. The Buddha was also like this. For those of us present, after hearing these Mahayana teachings, really thinking, oh, Whether exchanging self and others or equalizing self and others, I want to have a beginning. From now on, I vow to benefit beings. One can make such a vow in one's mind. In one's diary, one should also write this down. Ultimately, we will truly become Mahayana children of the Buddha. Good. That's all for today.
Bandara Banma Sodargye